who's in the paddock in 2025? If you haven't noticed, there's a lot of horse metaphors in motorsport. Horsepower being the obvious one. Paddock, like the field where all the horses roam. Scuderia, Ferrari, basically the stable. Motorsport likes the horse metaphors. So let's talk about the teams. There's 10 teams, 10 vibes, 10 different liveries. Pick the one you like the most. Honestly, that's such an easy way to start. Maybe you've watched some Drive to Survive and you've got a feel for which teams you seem to like. Pick multiple teams. I don't mind liking 5 out of 10 teams. It gives me some extra things to watch out for. Start watching the teams, start watching the development plans, the engineering, the driver lineup that they have. Find which one you like the most. Again, pick a color. So let's talk more about the teams now and a bit more background into each of them. Teams change over time. Some are bought out. Some are kind of evolutions of the same team, different name, different branding. These go all the way back to the 1950s and even before that, but 1950 is when the first official Grand Prix was held for Formula One. Before that, it was a bunch of Grand Prix and races, but it wasn't officially Formula One. You might have watched old highlight clips and go, wait, where's that team nowadays? Or maybe you used to watch these races and you're like, wait, where's my team that I used to watch back then? Like Jordan, where's Eddie Jordan's team? Well, the old Eddie Jordan team of the 1990s changed hands a few times. It became Force India for a while, then was bought out by billionaire Lawrence Stroll, which is now known as Aston Martin. So there's brand and title sponsor changes there. Going back to the top, McLaren and Ferrari have stayed the same, but Mercedes was famously Brawn GP for only one World Championship season back in 2009 before that. Williams has been there the entire time as themselves. Alpine has been Renault and Lotus and Renault again and Benetton and Tolman. Famous drivers like Schumacher coming in and Benetton. So they've got a long storied history there. You've got Visa Cash App RB or VCARB or Racing Bulls as they're known today in 2025. They're the sister team, the younger sister team to Red Bull Racing down here, which formerly was known as Jaguar. Basically, Racing Bulls is where the younger drivers, the newer drivers, try to hone their skills and show what they're capable of and see if they're worthy of putting the Red Bull seat. Red Bull is a very notable contender. They won multiple world championships starting in the 2010s as well as then the 2020s. You've got Kick Sauber, who are Alfa Romeo previously, who are Sauber in the past, BMW. They're the green one today. And you've also got Haas, the only American team on the grid right now. I love them because they're one of those underdogs. So teams change a lot. So now I want to talk about where the teams stand as of the end of 2024. Because while we're in the middle of the 2025 season, team positions change constantly in terms of the points and how they're racing weekend to weekend. So this is based on the end of the last season, with McLaren Mercedes being the Constructors' Championship. They're known as McLaren Mercedes because McLaren is the constructor, but they're using the Mercedes engine. You'll see that in a few of these others. They are the orange team based out of Woking, UK. They've got one of the largest staff pools of about 1,500 staff. They were third at the start of this current ground effects era that we'll talk about when we get to the cars. And they were ninth back in 2017. They've come a long way from ninth to first. It is possible, but typically there's a lag time when management and other things change inside these teams to get everything aligned again, to work your way up, if you can work up at all. Ferrari was number 2. They got up there right at the very end. Ferrari's consistently in the top 3, but they haven't won a world championship in over 15 years now. So as you can see here, they were second at the start of this current era. They're second of the era before that. Very curious to see where they place this year and where they place next year with the new regulations. But Ferrari will always be one of those staples. It is iconic for Formula One, the Scarlet Red Ferrari team. Red Bull Racing Honda RBPT, Honda Red Bull Powertrain. They're the ones with the giant Red Bull on it. Oracle painted on the side, currently third, which is quite surprising because they were coming off of multiple world championships in a row with Max Verstappen, their lead driver, but they slipped up last year. It was still a race at the very end, but Red Bull was kind of relying mainly on their first driver, Max, to get them the points and keep them up there. Now that they've dropped from first to third, that's tens of millions of dollars lost in terms of money you can spend towards next year's car. Now, when you drop lower in the rankings at the end of the year, there are some benefits. While you don't get the prize money, the other thing that these teams get is more wind tunnel time. Basically time to test out the aerodynamics of your car. Teams are allocated certain time in there to test. That way it kind of tries to even the playing field a bit. Let's try to give the other teams a little bit of a handicap by giving them some more time in testing their cars. They're based out of the UK as well. There were multiple Constructors Championships as well at the start of the 2010s, as I mentioned earlier, before Mercedes really kicked it off with a hybrid era in 2014. Mercedes, naturally, then, they're the Silver Arrows or the black car out of the UK. All of these UK teams are quite close to each other geographically. Honestly, Mercedes is still my favorite team. It is just one of those places that I would love to work at if I had that chance. This is how I evaluate some of the teams that I like, is where would I like to work? Which team principal would I like to work under if I had the chance? And Toto Wolff, I really like his style. One of the things he said in an interview that I heard was that we don't blame people, we blame the process. So we never say, why did you do that wrong? We say, what did we do wrong that led to this happening? I love that management style so much. It keeps me very much into that team. They have not been doing well this era. They were third at the start of it. They came from back-to-back Constructors World Championships for 8 years straight until Red Bull took over. And in this new era of car, they just went through so many grand experiments in terms of the design. And I'll talk about side pods and stuff later, but it didn't work out for them. They had to kind of switch halfway through, and they're just now coming back, still tweaking. This has not been their era, but they're a team I'll keep following at least while Toto's there. And hey, to be honest, I think their black livery looks the best out of all of the cars. Sometimes you gotta pick them based on liveries. So with that, let's go to the midfield. The midfield is what it sounds like. It's the teams in the middle. Aston Martin also has a Mercedes engine. It's the emerald green car. It's owned by billionaire Lawrence Stroll. His son is racing in one of the two driver's seats. We'll talk about Lance Stroll later on. Lawrence Stroll has always wanted to own a Formula One team. He bought it out from the previous owners, and he is pumping a ton of money into that team. He's built the most world-class facilities for F1, new wind tunnels, new everything. Lawrence Stroll was able to negotiate a deal recently to get Adrian Newey, one of the most prolific car designers in Formula One history. They got him from Red Bull. So how is Adrian going to help the current team's car and next year's car? We'll wait and see, but he is not disappointed in the past. Aston Martin is really setting themselves up for big things. They were lagging behind in 2022, but they got up to 5th last year. Before that, back in 2017, they were known under a different team, which is why I have the little asterisk there. But watch Aston Martin. If you've pumped all that money into it, they're sure hoping for a better return in coming years. Alpine Renault was 6th, is the last of the Renault powertrains. They're the fun pink car, thanks to BWT, their sponsor. If you've watched F1 over the years, you might have seen different teams be the pink one, the BWT team. Like it used to be Racing Point, which is now Aston Martin. So it's really important to watch the title sponsors like BWT to see how the livery, that color, the way it looks, the graphics and all that might change hands in terms of which team it is. So you might have been thinking, oh, I've been watching this team for 10 years, but no, it could easily have changed. They're based out of the UK, but they are a French team. They are the only French team on the circuit. This is where factories and team ownership can change where teams from. This is the team that went from around 9th or 10th up to 6th. They snatched it away from Haas right at the end with just a few extra points. They've always been around the midfield. They were, again, 6th under a different name back in 2017. 4th in 2022. There seems to be a new news story every single week of like, who's new there? But I do like the pink livery because it stands out. Haas is there. Haas is using the Ferrari powertrain, and they are the only U.S. team. They're the white and black car based out of North Carolina, the only U.S. team. They've got the smallest staff size. They've always been around the 8th position or so. They've changed team principals recently. If you've watched Drive to Survive, you're probably very familiar with Gunther Steiner, but Io is their new team principal. And I'm liking his style in terms of how he's doing it. They've got some new drivers in. Haas is always kind of fun. They're the underdog that I like to see how they're going to do. Then you've got Racing Bulls. They are the other car with a giant Red Bull on the top of it, except they are the white one with Visa written on the side of it. The sister team to Red Bull Racing, where again, they put in the new up-and-coming talent for Red Bull and see, can these drivers perform? And if they do, they might pull some of their drivers up to the Red Bull Racing seat. But as they famously say in F1, it's not a finishing school. When there's only 20 drivers on the grid, there are so many other people that would be vying for that coveted seat. If you're up here, you've got to perform. The Red Bull car itself is known as one of the hardest cars to drive. Racing Bull seems to be more of a tamer car. They're based in Faenza, Italy, not actually the UK. They've got a smaller staff size. They've been changing their name a lot too, which is really hard to track where they've positioned because it was RB last year, or V-Carb. It was AlphaTauri before that. It was Toro Rosso before that, which is just Red Bull in Italian. Creative. But they're always there. They've got some new fun drivers. We'll talk about the drivers in a minute. But Racing Bull is just that. It is the sister team that you could expect to be more in the midfield. Now, in terms of the back of the field in 2024, we unfortunately had Williams Mercedes. They're the all blue one. They're also based out of the UK. They've got a moderate sized staff. And Williams, not just because of the name, does have more of that family feel to it. At least that's how they describe it. James Vowles took over that team. Only the third ever team principal for that team, has been around for years. So there's a lot of legacy there. James Vowles talks about them as being some of the most passionate people about their team and their sport. Williams used to be a big F1 Constructors Championship back in the day. It's been a long time since then. They've definitely struggled. At the start of this era, they were at the very back. Last year, they finished at 9th. It's been hard for them when they used to be in the midfield or higher. Will James Vowles be able to bring them to the top? That's definitely his goal. He's always stated since he took over that his plan is for 2026. He's looking for the next generation, not the current one. He talks about these being years to experiment, years where, you know what, let's try things. We'll get stuff wrong, but let's try to do something different because what we had been doing hadn't been working. I love that leadership style, which makes me so fascinated to watch Williams and see where they place every weekend. James Vowles also does something pretty awesome as a team principal. He's currently going on social media every weekend after the race and giving his 2-minute rundown of how he sees the race went. I don't really see other team principals doing that. So I love that open exposure to the fans. Williams also typically does fan events at the circuits to get more and more people bought into it. So I definitely like watching Williams and can't wait to see how they do this year. Last, this Kick Sauber Ferrari, the other team using the Ferrari engine. They're the green and black ones. They're based out of Switzerland. They've also got quite a small staff. They've been known by many different teams, as I showed on one of the previous slides. Within the Sauber family, though. And last year in 2024, it was painful. They had the longest pit stops out of everybody, just things that won't go on right. Their car was heavy and slow. Up until the final races, they had 0 points between the two drivers. It's hard to watch a team, and especially those drivers, you feel for them just struggling and just not being able to get it. But the reason you don't give up in F1 as a driver and as a team is because you don't know what can happen that can lead to you finally getting points and getting on the table and potentially moving your way up.